Divorced at 40 with nothing but an empty apartment and a name my ex-wife didn't want anymore. My boss looked at me in the lobby on a rainy Tuesday night and said 5 words that rewired my entire life. "Can you walk me home?" I should have said no. I know that now. Because everything that happened after that walk, the rumors, the betrayal, the moment I fell so hard for a woman I had no business falling for, all of it traces back to that one question I didn't have the sense to turn down. But here's what nobody tells you about the word yes. Sometimes it doesn't just change your night, it changes your whole life. My name is Mitchell Crane. I'm 40 years old, divorced, project manager at a commercial real estate firm. But before my boss ever asked me to walk her home, I had already been gutted. My wife Vanessa left me for my best friend after 13 years of marriage. She looked me in the face and told me I was too ordinary to love. I grew up dirt poor in Beaumont, Texas, with a mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. I built myself from nothing, gave that woman everything I had. And she walked out holding another man's hand, like I never existed. My boss was Sloan Whitmore, 37 years old, director of development, sharp, composed, respected by everyone on that floor. But behind that polished exterior, she was carrying something nobody in that building knew about, something that was eating her alive. But why would a woman like Sloan ask a man like me to walk her home? What was she hiding behind those calm, professional eyes? Why did that single walk in the rain crack open 2 people who had sworn they'd never let anyone in again? And why do I keep saying I should have said no when that walk gave me everything I never thought I'd have again? Let me take you back. Before the walk. Before Sloan. Before any of it. Back to who I was when the world still made sense. And the woman sleeping beside me still knew my name. I met Vanessa Cole when I was 26 years old. She was working the front desk at an accounting firm I was delivering blueprints to. She had dark curly hair, a laugh that filled the whole lobby, and this way of looking at you that made you feel like you were the only person in the building. I asked her to coffee. She said no. I asked again the next week. She said maybe. The 3rd time she said, "If you show up with something better than coffee, I'll think about it." I showed up with concert tickets and a sandwich from her favorite deli. She laughed so hard she almost choked on the pastrami. We were married by the time I was 27, and for 13 years I gave that woman everything I built with my own 2 hands. But to understand what I built, you need to understand where I built it from. Beaumont, Texas, the poor side, the side that doesn't make the postcards. I grew up in a 2-bedroom shotgun house with a leaking roof and windows that didn't lock. My mother, Lorraine Crane, was 5'2" and made of iron wrapped in prayer. She worked mornings at a laundromat and nights cleaning office buildings, and she still made sure my little brother Reggie and I had clean shirts and a hot plate every single night. Some months we had electricity, some months we didn't. One winter, Mama ran an extension cord from Mr. Perkins' outlet next door just to keep the space heater going so Reggie and I didn't freeze in our sleep. She never complained. Not once. She just kept going, like stopping wasn't something her body knew how to do. I swore on everything I had, which was nothing, that I'd build a life she could be proud of. I studied under flashlights when the power was out. I took a bus 40 minutes each way to a better school because Mama said, "You're not going to be limited by this zip code, Mitchell." I got a scholarship to college, first one in my family to go, worked 2 jobs to cover what the scholarship didn't. Graduated with a degree in project management and a chip on my shoulder the size of Texas. By 35, I had a career, a house, a wife, and a life that looked nothing like that shotgun house in Beaumont. I thought I'd won. I thought the hard part was over. But poverty teaches you something that success never does. It teaches you that everything can be taken. And the things you think are yours, the roof, the ring, the person next to you in bed, they're only yours as long as someone else decides they are. Vanessa decided at year 13. I came home on a Thursday evening. Normal day, normal drive. Walked through the front door and found her sitting on the couch with her bags packed, not crying, not shaking, just sitting there with her coat on and her hands in her lap like she was waiting for a bus. "What's going on?" I said. She didn't look at me. "I'm leaving, Mitchell." My briefcase hit the floor. "What do you mean you're leaving?" "I mean I'm leaving. Troy is picking me up in 20 minutes. Troy Bassett, my best friend since college, the man who stood next to me at my wedding. The, man I'd loaned money to, fixed cars for, defended in arguments, trusted with everything short of my own heartbeat. Troy, I repeated, like saying his name might change what it meant. She finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was relief. Like leaving me was the first free breath she'd taken in years. You're a good man, Mitchell. You are. But you're too ordinary, too safe, too predictable. I need someone who makes me feel something. 13 years, I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. 13 years and I'm too ordinary? She picked up her bag. I'm sorry. She wasn't. Troy pulled up 7 minutes later. I know because I counted every one. She walked out the front door without looking back. She climbed into the passenger seat of a truck I'd helped him finance, and they drove away while I stood in my own living room, surrounded by furniture we'd picked together, breathing air that still smelled like her perfume, trying to figure out how a man can build a life from nothing and still end up with exactly that. Nothing. The divorce took 4 months. She got the house, I got the apartment, she got the dog. I got the silence. I didn't fight for any of it, because fighting requires the belief that something is worth saving, and Vanessa had salted the earth so thoroughly that nothing inside me could grow. At 40 years old, I was single, childless, living in a 1-bedroom apartment with furniture from a clearance sale and a refrigerator that held beer, leftover Chinese, and a bottle of hot sauce that had been there since I moved in. I went to work. I came home. I went to work again. I called Mama every Sunday. She'd ask if I was eating. I'd say yes. She'd ask if I was happy. I'd change the subject. That was my life the night Sloan Whitmore asked me to walk her home. I'd worked at Cresswell Partners for 2 years. Sloan had been director of development the entire time. She was the kind of woman who made you pay attention without asking you to. 5'7". Auburn hair she usually wore pulled back, green eyes that could run a meeting without her saying a word. She dressed sharp, spoke clean, never raised her voice because she never needed to. When Sloan talked, people listened, not because she demanded it, because she earned it. But here's the thing about Sloan that nobody on that floor knew. She was falling apart. 3 months before that night in the lobby, her mother, Ruth Whitmore, died. Early onset Alzheimer's. Sloan had spent the last 7 years of her life managing her career with one hand and losing her mother with the other. Ruth had been a piano teacher. She used to play Chopin from memory with her eyes closed. The disease took the Chopin first. Then it took the memories. Then it took her daughter's name. And finally, it took everything else. Sloan was at her bedside when it happened, holding a hand that hadn't squeezed back in months, whispering, "It's okay, Mama. You can go." Nobody at Cresswell Partners knew any of this. Sloan didn't take a single day off. She showed up the Monday after the funeral in the same tailored blazer, same composed face, same steady voice, but something behind her eyes had gone quiet. Like a room where the music stopped and nobody noticed. I noticed, but I didn't say anything, because at that point I was too broken to fix myself, let alone recognize the cracks in someone else. Then came that Tuesday night. Company networking event, the kind with cheap wine and forced conversations. I stayed long enough to be seen, then headed for the door around 9:30. The lobby was empty except for the security guard and a woman standing by the front desk, phone pressed to her ear, voice tight with frustration. Sloan. How long for the tow? An hour and a half? It's almost 10 o'clock. She hung up, stared at her phone, pressed her fingertips to her forehead. I should have kept walking. I was tired. It was raining. I had leftover Chinese calling my name and a couch that didn't ask me any questions. But something in the way she stood there, alone in that empty lobby, shoulders carrying something heavier than a dead car battery, made me stop. Everything okay? She looked up, startled, like she'd forgotten other people existed. Car won't start. Tow truck is 90 minutes out. She forced a smile. It's fine. I'll wait. Where do you live? Hayes and 8th, 8 blocks. I looked at the rain streaking down the glass doors. I looked at her. I looked at the exit. I should have said no. That sentence would echo in my head for months to come, not because walking her home was a mistake, but because it cracked open something inside me that I had spent 2 years sealing shut. And once it opened, there was no closing it again. "I'll walk you," I said. She hesitated. "Mitchell, you don't have to. I know, but it's raining and it's late, and my mother raised me in a house with no electricity, but she made sure I had manners." Something in her face shifted. A flicker. Not a smile. Not yet. But the ghost of one. The kind that shows up when someone surprises you by being decent in a world that's been anything but. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." We stepped out into the rain, and that's when everything I thought I knew about my life, about my boss, and about the walls I'd built to keep the world out, started falling apart in the best and worst way possible. But what happened on that walk, what Sloan told me between blocks 5 and 6 that nearly stopped me in the middle of the sidewalk, and what I said back that I'd never told another living soul. That part of the story is where everything truly begins. The first 2 blocks were safe. Work talk, surface level. The rain was light, tapping on our shoulders like it was trying to get our attention. But by block 3, the silence between sentences started stretching longer, and something shifted. The professional distance between boss and employee started thinning with every step. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said, eyes forward. "Depends on how personal." "Why do you always look like you're carrying something you won't put down?" That one hit me in the chest. I didn't answer right away. We walked half a block in silence before I said, "Because I am." She nodded slowly. "Me too." By block 5, the rain picked up. We ducked under the awning of a closed bookstore, standing shoulder to shoulder, watching the street turn silver under the streetlights. And that's where the walls came down. She told me about Ruth, about the Alzheimer's that stole her mother one memory at a time, how Ruth used to play Chopin with her eyes closed, and how the disease took the music first, then the memories, then her daughter's name. How Sloan sat beside her at the end, holding a hand that didn't squeeze back, whispering, "It's okay, Mama. You can go." How she showed up to work the next Monday like nothing happened because falling apart felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. "Today is 3 months," she whispered. 3 months since she died, and I haven't told a single person at that office." I looked at her. Rain dripping off the awning between us and the world. And I told her something I hadn't told anyone. Not Davis, not my mother, nobody. I told her about the night Vanessa left, about Troy pulling up in the truck I helped finance, about standing in my own living room smelling her perfume in the air while everything I'd built for 13 years drove away in someone else's passenger seat. About growing up so poor, my mother ran extension cords to the neighbor's house for electricity. About how I swore I'd be more than that zip code, and I became more, and it still wasn't enough for the woman I loved. She told me I was too ordinary, I said, too safe, too boring to love. Sloan turned to me, rain on her face, eyes wide. She was wrong, she said, not soft, not gentle, like a fact, like gravity. She was completely wrong, Mitchell. Something cracked inside me, not broke, opened. We stood there for a long time, 2 people soaked through, hiding under an awning, carrying losses they'd never spoken out loud until tonight. And the silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was full, warm, alive. We walked the last 3 blocks slower than the first 5. When we reached her building, she stopped at the door, turned to me, hair damp, eyes glassy. "Thank you for walking me home. Any time." She went inside. I walked 8 blocks back to my car in the pouring rain, and every step felt different because something had just started that I couldn't name yet. But I should have known, because the moment I showed up to work the next morning, everything I thought was private between 2 people on a rainy sidewalk became public, and the fallout was coming faster than I could have ever prepared for. The next morning, Davis leaned over my desk. "People are talking, bro. Someone saw you and Sloan walking in the rain." Grant Mercer made sure of that. Within a week, the whispers had teeth, that I was sleeping my way into better projects, that Sloan was playing favorites. Grant smiled at me in meetings the way a man smiles when he's already lit the fuse. I did what wounded men do. I pulled away, kept conversations cold. The coffee she left on my desk one morning sat untouched until it went cold. I saw the hurt flicker across her face, the quiet kind that doesn't make noise but leaves a bruise. Then Vanessa showed up, finalized insurance paperwork, saw me, saw Sloan, connected with Grant online. Suddenly the office rumors had details only my ex-wife could have provided. Everything was closing in. The walls I'd rebuilt were higher than ever. Then my mother called. "Mitchell, something's wrong." Lorraine Crane, the woman who raised 2 boys with no electricity and never once sat down to cry, had collapsed at work. Her heart. They said it was a warning. They said next time it might not be. I drove 4 hours to Beaumont in the middle of the night, sat in a plastic hospital chair holding my mama's hand, watching monitors blink, feeling that same helpless weight from when Vanessa walked out. Losing something you can't live without and being powerless to stop it. At 6 a.m., the hospital door opened. Sloan walked in. No makeup, wrinkled blouse, bag of food, and 2 coffees. She'd driven straight through without stopping. "How did you know I was here?" "Davis told me." She looked at my mother, looked at me. "I know what it feels like to sit in this chair, Mitchell. I know what it feels like to watch the strongest woman you've ever known hooked up to machines." Her voice cracked. "You don't have to do it alone." She sat down beside me, close enough to hold the weight. Mama opened her eyes an hour later, looked at me, looked at Sloan, and Lorraine Crane, who had never met this woman, said 5 words. "She drove all night, baby." Then she looked at Sloan. "Thank you for showing up." Sloan's chin trembled. "He's worth showing up for." Mama smiled, the slow knowing smile of a woman who taught her son that love isn't what people say. It's what they do when it costs them something. In the hallway, Sloan leaned against the wall, exhausted. "You drove 4 hours, I said, because 3 months ago I sat in a room just like that one and nobody came. I swore if I ever had the chance to be the person who walks through that door, I wouldn't hesitate. I'm done running, Sloan." "From what?" "From you. From whatever started the night you asked me to walk you home. You terrify me. The last time I let someone in, she burned my life down. But you drove 4 hours for a man the whole office is trying to destroy, and my mother looked at you like she already knew." "Knew what?" "That you're the one." She broke. I pulled her into me in that hospital hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing, smell of disinfectant and stale coffee, and held her the way I should have since the night it rained. After that, everything changed. Steady. Real. Grant's rumors died after I confronted him with documentation. Vanessa disappeared after I thanked her for leaving. Because if you'd stayed, I never would have found out what it feels like to be chosen by someone who actually means it. Sloan restructured the reporting line to remove the conflict. Did it without being asked, because that's who she was. Mama recovered fully. Her Sunday calls changed from, "Are you eating?" to "How's Sloan?" 6 months later, I drove Sloan to Beaumont. She walked into Mama's tiny house and Lorraine hugged her like she'd been waiting all along. They talked for 3 hours about Ruth, the Alzheimer's, the piano, the grief. Mama held Sloan's hands and said, "Your mama would be so proud of you, sweetheart. And I'm proud of the woman who chose my son." Sloan cried the way you cry when someone gives you the thing you didn't know you were missing. A mother's approval. A place to belong. 1 year later. Rainy Tuesday evening. My phone rang. "Hey, funny thing. My car won't start." I laughed. "Again?" "Mitchell Crane, can you walk me home?" I walked 8 blocks in the rain. She was standing in the lobby. Same spot, same rain on the glass. But everything else was different. Because this time when we reached the door, it wasn't her apartment. It was our home. She turned to me on the doorstep. "Still think you should have said no?" I looked at her. This woman who asked a broken man to walk her home on the worst night of her year. Who drove through the night for my mama. Who taught me that ordinary isn't a flaw, it's a foundation. And the right person doesn't need fireworks because steady hands and an honest heart are worth more than all the fire in the world. "I should have said no," I whispered. "But it's the best yes I ever gave." She kissed me in the rain, on our doorstep, in front of a life neither of us thought we'd have again. So if you're out there right now, divorced, broken, told you're too ordinary to be loved, hear me. The person who left did you a favor. They cleared the road for the one who's coming. And that person will look at exactly who you are and say, Can you walk me home? Now sit with this. Don't scroll past it. If the person who broke your heart had never left, would you have ever found the love you were actually meant for? Or did losing everything turn out to be the only way to find what was real? Tell me in the comments. Somebody watching right now needs your answer tonight. Hit subscribe. Tap that notification bell wherever you're watching from. These aren't just stories. They're lifelines. And this channel is where people who've been through the fire come to remember they made it out alive. I'll see you in the next one.